crooked. We crooked. How's that? Less crooked? We got some shadows. Hey guys, Teresa Joy coming live to you on this glorious Friday. Live for Jordan Sheridan Reports. Hey, Justin. Still crooked. Bear with me. It's okay. This is guerrilla style filming. Is that crooked? No. Okay, so first of all, I want to say, if you saw my live yesterday, you don't have to watch today's live because it's the same thing. I went live yesterday. I reported these stories. I finished my live. I uploaded my live. I saw it on the channel. I saw it uploading or whatever it does. And then I went back later to check on it, and it was not there, and it's still not there. So I went live yesterday, and then it disappeared into thin air. It's gone, 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 which is disheartening because I don't like that happened with one of my streams. Okay, so it's normal. It's somewhat normal. Holy crap, if it happens again, I'm going to back it up from now on and tape on my DSLR, because it's like when you go live and you talk for over an hour, and I'm a listener, generally, not a talker. It's heartbreaking when something gets deleted and goes off into nowhere. So anyways, if you're just hearing me for the first time, you didn't join me yesterday, we're going to talk about some stuff today. Some stuff. First of all, I want to talk about superdelegates. Superdelegates, super fascist. Enough is enough. Why do we even have superdelegates? We have superdelegates to stack the elections against the citizens, so we can continue, the DNC can continue to handpick corporate Democrats that they can control as puppets. And you know, they're debating that right now and trying to change the rules for superdelegates. So I want to talk about that. Trump, it's not called pardoned. He freed Alice Johnson. I don't know if you've known about her. You probably know more. I mean, you've probably seen the picture of Kim Kardashian at the White House, and a lot of people have been tweeting that and sharing it on social media without really knowing the story behind it. And I saw a lot of, you know, like, this is a circus, which it does seem like it's a circus. And in one way it is, because apparently the only way to get your message heard from politicians or the president is to be Kim Kardashian and have millions of people who follow you on social media. And Kim was an apprentice, celebrity apprentice. So Trump freed Alice Johnson, which is amazing, but because at the request of Kim Kardashian, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, again, Trump canceled on the Philadelphia Eagles. They were supposed to go to the White House, and why this is important, and why this is not just, well, this is important because, of course, it's all about take a knee, and that's about violence and disproportionate violence toward African Americans in the country, but also that there's so much hypocrisy in that Trump canceled the meeting with the Philadelphia Eagles because some of the men on that team are literally saints. I mean, they do so much for the community and so much for causes to fight injustices that, to be in Trump's presence is so below them. And also about children in cages. And I know we've probably all heard about this, but let's talk about it. Let's start with the DNC, because this is so important. If we can't vote in the people that we need to have change this country, and that would be like the progressive Democratic candidates who do not take money from donors, if we don't have the power to vote them in, we're screwed, because the corporate Democrats are bought and sold, and they are under the spell, and they are puppets to corporations, just like all other politicians. And as long as we have politicians who are puppets doing the bidding of corporations like fossil fuels, we're going to have a country that is sick and oppressed and imprisoned So let's talk about what are superdelegates. Let's go back to 2016 primaries. It was a beautiful night in California. 30,000 plus people packed a stadium anticipating Bernie Sanders. And the energy was high. If you've ever gone to a Bernie Sanders rally, you know what it feels like. I've gone to many. I literally drove, hours and hours just to go to Bernie Sanders rallies. Not that I had not already gone or heard his message, but because the energy and the unity and the hope, it was so strong and so powerful at his rallies, because everybody there knew that this man could change the country, could finally end so much of the corruption and oppression and injustices in the country. And he was hope. He is hope. So that's the vibe that was there that night in 2016 in California. There were 30,000 people plus in the stadium. I heard there was something like 20,000 or more outside the stadium. And oh my goodness, what is her name? It's just like my woman crush, Nina Turner. Nina Turner was about to introduce Bernie, and she stepped out onto the stage and she realized, I'm just looking at my elderly dog struggling over there. Okay. She realized that something had gone wrong. A wave of despair had swept across the crowd. People were on their phones. It looked like people were panicking. What had happened? What had happened was that those 30,000 people who were there, who supported Bernie Sanders, had not even voted yet in the primaries. And it had been announced already, without the votes of the people, that Hillary Clinton had won California, without the people even voting. How is that possible? That is possible because of superdelegates. Because of superdelegates. What are superdelegates? Superdelegates are people anointed by the DNC okay, so you have delegates and you have super delegates. It would be lovely, in my opinion, if we had one person, one vote system, where if you have 2 million people, you have 2 million votes, and those votes are counted, and the person who gets the most votes is the person who wins whatever. That would be fair to me. But that's not the way it is. They have delegates and super delegates. Now, delegates represent the people's votes. So super delegates are just individual people who can vote whatever way they want for a candidate, not even based on what the people want. And that is the problem here. And after that situation with Bernie and Hillary in 2016, a lot of the progressives, including myself, raised hell, including Bernie, and said, look, this has to change. This is completely undemocratic. This is not a democracy at all. Superdelegates should not have this much power. Obviously, a lot of people, like myself, ideally would say superdelegates should not exist. But the DNC is still in charge somewhat. So that's not going to happen. So this is what's happening this week. They're going into talks about reducing the power of superdelegates. And I loved Politico's title, House Dems Seethe Over Superdelegates Plan. Yeah, of course they do. House Dems being corporate Dems, being puppets who want to vote in other puppets like Hillary, and not progressive people who don't take money from donors like Bernie. The controversial issue of superdelegates and their future in the Democratic Party led to an angry confrontation on Tuesday night between Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez and House Democrats, according to several lawmakers. So Tom Perez doesn't like this. Superdelegates are essentially an elite class of delegates that stack the primary process against the wishes of regular voters. That then they made up 15% in 2016. They made up 16 or 15% at the convention. This is what Politico says, and I love this. The logic is that party leaders immersed in the candidates and issues of the day can provide a guardrail against selecting unelectable nominee for the general election. So that's what they're supposed to do. The superdelegates are supposed to protect the imbecile citizens from making the wrong decision and nominating an unelectable candidate. And so last year, in their infinite wisdom, God, it seems like last year, 2016, in their infinite wisdom, the superdelegates decided to make sure that Hillary was elected instead of Bernie, because she was so electable that she was, she was a fave, wasn't she? She was. No, Hillary actually scored lower her in the polls than any candidate in history, wasn't it? It showed time and time again in the polls that Hillary was not going to beat Trump. I mean, this was apparent at the beginning of the primaries. Hillary was not going to beat Trump. Poll after poll showed that Bernie would beat Trump. Hillary lost to a narcissist, sociopath, racist, vile, celebrity reality TV show host who has gone bankrupt numerous times, who has gone to court for ripping off. I don't even know how many people were involved in Trump University. Hillary did not beat this snake oil salesman. So thank you so much, DNC, for correcting the choice of the idiotic citizens and putting up a guardrail so that we could put forth an electable candidate in Hillary Clinton. Thank you so much. So that's the logic. Under the current system, a Democratic candidate can still claim delegates from a state he or she lost by a wide margin if those delegates are among the roughly 700 superdelegates and the Democratic Party leaders who have the ability to cast their votes however they choose. Who are the superdelegates? Congress members, governors, party elders, such as former presidents and former vice presidents, DNC members, and other distinguished party leaders. So we have Hillary Clinton in there. We have Bill Clinton in there. Those are superdelegates. Democratic activists desire to eliminate and scale down the superdelegates because of what happened with Bernie and Hillary. So what happened after the situation with Bernie and Hillary was that the DNC's Unity Reform Commission was formed. The Unity Reform Commission is a 21-member panel of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders supporters. They spent the better part of 2017 crafting a series of recommendations that included a 60% reduction in superdelegates. So that's on the table right now. One of the options is a 60% reduction in superdelegates, which would take the current 700 superdelegates and reduce that to 280 superdelegates. Now, that's something Tom Perez does not want. He does not want that. He's putting out ideas that are far less radical, trying to just basically appease the public by throwing scraps. But the Rules and Bylaws Committee has to hammer out the details by the end of June and present recommendations to the full DNC at the summer meeting in August. So, okay. It's fundamentally ridiculous, in my opinion, and goes against everything, the basic principles of a democracy, to have superdelegates, to have, I really do believe it should be one person, one vote. Let's put it this way, for example. As of March 2016, 7 million people had voted, but 473 superdelegates voted. At that time, the superdelegates accounted for 41.8% of the delegates. That's how much power they had. So those 473 people basically had the same power as 2,926,000 citizens of the United States. 463 superdelegates had the same power as almost 3 million American voters. Now, if we lived in a developing country and we heard that 473 people were somehow responsible for 3 million votes, we would call that election fraud. But in the United States, we call that superdelegates. I want to read one quote by Nina Turner in regards to superdelegates. And if you don't know who Nina Turner is, please find out. I have met her multiple times. She not only is an honest, progressive, strong politician, but this is a woman who is literally full of love. I'm going to get hippy dippy on you right now, but there is a lot to be said about a politician who has compassion. A politician who is driven by the desire to make the country a better place for its citizens. She truly is a remarkable and loving woman. But on top of that, that woman is honest as hell. She is honest. She is straightforward. She doesn't play games. You can check her history, check all her policies, everything she's ever done. There is no spots on her resume, just like Bernie Sanders. I love Nina. I do. I love her. I had an interview with her. I'll post it. We were both in tears. She is an incredible woman, and I do believe that leaders should be compassionate because you have to be in tune with the struggles of the citizens in order to make things better. And so far in this country, no one has been. I don't give a shit. I'm sorry, but I mean, Obama was a hell of a lot better than Trump. Of course he was, but there was a lot of corrupt things that were happening during the Obama administration. That's my rabbit. Excuse me? Excuse me. Yes, I have a rabbit running around my house at the moment. I saved a rabbit. I did not buy him. I don't think rabbits should be pets, by the way. Someone had ditched him in the middle of a snowy field and then called me crying. And I said, bring the rabbit over. That's a little bit about me. So Alice Johnson, back to Alice Johnson. Trump frees Alice Johnson. But what about the 1,000 other people that are in jail right now due to nonviolent drug-related crimes? But yes, I'm very happy Alice Johnson is out. How did this come about? How did Trump end up commuting the life sentence of Alice Johnson? Let's start by who is Alice Johnson. Alice Johnson, I think she's in her 60s. Yes, 63-year-old great-grandmother now. She had been fired from her job. I believe at the time she had 4 or 5 children she was supporting, and she said she made the biggest mistake in her life, and she became an informant for drug dealers. Just sharing messages, sharing information, and she was caught, and she was sentenced to life in prison. Life in prison for a non-violent it was her first crime ever, non-violent crime, life in prison. So she served 22 years. She was just released. She missed the life and the death of her parents. She was not allowed to attend their funerals. She missed the birth of her grandchildren and now her great-grandchild. She missed a lot in life. You had a lot of people trying to bring light to her situation for many, many years. I mean, she did spend 22 years in jail, so there was a lot of time for that, because it just seemed as if she should not be there for that amount of time. But it took Kim Kardashian to get the president to commute her life sentence. So when I first saw this picture of Kim Kardashian and Trump, I thought, oh, wow, it's a shit show. To be honest, it's the circus, in which I was seeing a lot of comments. What a circus, what a shit show. And I didn't think it was real. I thought it was photoshopped. So I went to Trump's Twitter account, and there it was. And he said, had a great meeting today with Kim Kardashian West, talking about prison reform. So I said, wow, what is that all about? And I got to give it to Kim. I got to give it to Kim. She used her power to do something incredible. She really, truly did. And this isn't a publicity stunt. God, Kim Kardashian doesn't need to do a publicity stunt, honestly. Maybe it is. I highly doubt it. She's doing quite well for herself without that. So what happened was Kim Kardashian West had retweeted Johnson's video, and this was a video that was on mic.com, mic.com. She retweeted it with the caption, "This is so unfair." Kim's retweet, in turn, got 8 million retweets. Like, wow. That is incredible. With great power comes great responsibility. And girl, you are using that power responsibly. So, damn. Of course. So, did Trump all of a sudden develop a conscience? Did he all of a sudden become a compassionate person? No. Trump wants glory. He wants recognition. He wants praise. And this is something that he definitely jumped on because it was Kim Kardashian and because 8 million people retweeted this. So of course he's going to talk to her and pardon Alice. So what did someone say? He's a tiny man who needs a tall balcony. Yes, he is. So let's talk a little bit about Alice. She spent 22 years in life. This is what she said. Well, a little bit. Alice is a great grandmother of 5. She, because of circumstances that led to her true desperation, she got involved in a drug conspiracy. She had been laid off from her job. Ex-husband lost her youngest son in a scooter accident and became involved in a drug conspiracy, basically to support her family. She relayed messages for drug dealers who were moving cocaine from Houston to Memphis and ultimately was convicted, partly based on the testimony of co-conspirators who actually had reduced sentences because they testified against Alice, but Alice got life. Alice Marie Johnson, when released, said, "I want to thank President Donald John Trump. Hallelujah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank Kim Kardashian West. I love you, angel. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. This is a miracle day." And it was, I'm sure. This has been the greatest day of my life, the most unexpected thing to happen to me in my life. I knew I had an attorney call, but I still didn't know what it was. And when they all came on, then I heard Kim Kardashian's voice, and she was the one who told me that it had happened, that I was free, that I was going to rejoin my family. So good for her. And I wanted to mention as well, her lawyer had put a clemency petition in before with President Obama at the time, and that was denied. So Obama had pardoned something like 200 to 300 prisoners from life sentences, and she was not one of them. So Trump did. Alice Marie Jones was sentenced to life in prison. Life offered me no opportunity for parole because there is no parole in the federal system. I had been in management for 10 years. When I lost my job, I struggled financially. I couldn't find it fast enough to take care of my family. I felt like a failure. I went into complete panic, and out of desperation, I made one of the worst decisions in my life. So what did she do when she was released? She immediately took that time, her moment in the spotlight, and she used it well. She's already advocating for the thousands of other people who are sentenced to life in prison for nonviolent drug-related crimes. She was on, I think it was Good Morning America, the TV, the Today Show, and other shows nationwide where she was advocating right off the bat for prison reform. So good for her. So let's talk about the stats. Almost 4,000 prisoners are serving life sentences for nonviolent crimes. 79% of those are drug offenses. If you included whole life sentences like de facto life, that's over 17,000 people. In federal prison alone, there are 1,500 people serving life without the possibility of parole for drug convictions. So it's a huge problem right now. Huge. Do I believe that people should be serving a life sentence for a nonviolent crime? No. Do I believe people should be serving a life sentence for a first offense, nonviolent crime? Absolutely not. Now, let's go back to Trump. Trump the savior. Trump, what was his? I didn't even know. Donald John Trump. Oh, knight in shining armor. All of a sudden he cares about prison reform, does he? Let's go to one of his quotes earlier this year. Trump, earlier this year. The other thing we have to do in terms of the drug problem is we have to be very tough on sentences. These people kill thousands of people over the course of their lives through drugs. So we're going to have to get much, much tougher in terms of penalty. And if you want to stop it, you look at certain countries where they have, as an example, the death penalty and say, how is your drug problem? And they will tell you, we don't have much of a drug problem. So, yeah, he was saying that drug-related offenders should face the death penalty. So, what a savior. What a savior. You know, Donald John Trump, if you want to look at other countries and say, what is your blank problem in order to fix said problem in our country, why are you ignoring the fact that other countries had problems with mass shootings and gun violence, and they put stricter gun laws into place that drastically reduced or ended those problems with mass shootings and gun violence? You want to look at other countries, look at Australia and ask Australia, how is your problem with mass shootings? And Australia will tell you, we really don't have a problem with mass shootings since we enforce stricter gun laws. Ask China, what is your, how is your problem with mass shootings? And China will say, well, the other day we had a person on the subway who was stabbing people, and one person died. But as far as mass shootings, we really don't have them since we put into place stricter gun laws. Donald John Trump. So how do we fix this problem? It is all about sentencing reform. Jennifer Turner, part of Alice's legal team and human rights researcher with the American Civil Liberties Union, author of the ACLU report A Living Death, Life Without Parole for Nonviolent Offenses, said what we really need is comprehensive sentencing reform that is retroactive, that will help thousands of people who currently live behind bars. And in terms of sentencing reform, there's a bill up in a federal bill that could provide some relief to some prisoners. In the states last year alone, 19 states passed bipartisan sentencing reform legislation some of which has been really historic, like Louisiana, that passed a package of bills. So it's happening. You have your politicians, like I said, like corporate politicians who are bought and sold to corporations, and prison makes a lot of money. Private prisons make a lot of money. Donald Trump has holds stocks in private prisons. There are many politicians who take campaign donations from prisons. So they're not going to be passing prison reform laws, obviously. And the progressive politicians who have dignity and morals, who aren't taking money from prisons, are the ones who are going to be passing this prison reform. So we have to make sure that moving forward, we find the progressive politicians and we help spread the word about them. Because if they're not taking money from big corporations, they're not going to have the same kind of campaign funds that the corporate politicians have, which means it's up to us to get the word out about them, because they're not going to be able to afford the big commercials and such. So here's a doozy, and I'm talking about, ooh, I was just shut down. If this one disappears, I shall be sad. Okay. So Trump cancels Philadelphia Eagles visit to the White House amid feud with players over racial justice protests. So on Monday, Trump called off the planned visit for Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles because most of the team said that they would not be attending. So instead of just having the players there that were actually there and ready to come, he called it off. Because for Trump, it's all about numbers. And why would he want to hold a party if people weren't going to show up? That would hurt his ego. That would hurt his pride. So he took to Twitter and he said, the Philadelphia Eagles are unable to come to the White House with their full team to be celebrated tomorrow. They disagree with their president because he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart, in honor of the great men and women of our military and the people of our country. So that's incredibly fascist, and it sounds like a dictator to me. He's really becoming more and more like a dictator. He said he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart. At what point did the president, who is a public servant, an elected public servant of the people, become a sultan or a king and gain that power to tell his subjects what to do? I mean, he's literally saying right now that he insists that these men proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart. So apparently Donald Trump thinks he owns people in this country, that he owns those football players. I know Mike Pence must agree with him. It sounds like, 16-year-olds who just won some kind of a confrontation when Mike Pence tweeted the CNN article about how this new policy had gone into place where they would be fined if they didn't stand for the national anthem. The team would be fined if they didn't stand for the national anthem, or they would, have to stay in the locker room. Mike Pence tweeted that headline from CNN and put hashtag winning, and then put something like a great victory for President Trump. So this is all about hashtag winning for Trump. So instead of being a public servant and a man who cares about the people, and saying, hey, Colin Kaepernick, why don't you come have a meeting with me? Let's talk about this issue. Let's talk about, police brutality and police accountability. Let's talk about all these unarmed men who were shot. Tell me about it. Let's see if we can fix this. Let's see if we can right this wrong. that's not his point of view. His point of view is hashtag winning. So I guess if you're Kim Kardashian, you can talk to Donald Trump and have him listen to you. But if you're Colin Kaepernick, guess not. So the irony of this is that not one single Eagles player kneeled during the national anthem during the 2017 season. So there were several Philadelphia Eagles who announced that they would not be visiting the White House for the traditional Super Bowl victory celebration as a protest against President Trump. Among them was Malcolm Jenkins, Torrey Smith, and Chris Long. And I do, again, sorry. So I do want to talk about these three men because they are heroes. They are doing more for the community and the citizens than Trump has ever or will ever do. We all know he's hurting us. So that's sort of... Anyways, so Chris Long also refused to visit the White House last year when he played for the New England Patriots and they won the Super Bowl then. So Malcolm Jenkins, let's talk about Malcolm Jenkins. He is part of a players coalition that partnered with the NFL to commit at least $90 million to programs combating social inequality. Incredible, incredible. In April, Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz announced that he would match up to $500,000 in donations to raise money to build a sports complex in Haiti. Eagles defensive end Chris Long donated his entire 2017 base salary worth $1 million to charity. And Philadelphia, sorry, that's completely separate. So like, let's reflect on that for a minute. So when you have your conservatives and you have your haters who like to jump on that bandwagon that, what did Trump call them? Son of a bitches. He called them sons of a bitches. And then you get all his constituents like little parrots. Sons of a bitches, sons of a bitches, sons of a bitches. Disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the flag. Disrespecting the veterans, when it was actually a veteran who had told Colin Kaepernick that this is how he should approach the situation to raise awareness for, police brutality, police accountability, and all these people being shot, unarmed people being shot. It was a veteran who told him to do this, to take the knee. There are veterans who say, I fought for this country so that the citizens will have the freedom to take a knee if they want, to protest if they want, to raise awareness for injustices. That's why I fought for this country. That's why men have died for this country, for freedom, for the freedom of the people in the country. Not for Donald J. Trump, hashtag winning, to insist like some kind of a dictator that people do exactly as he says. So, yeah, when you have your conservatives who start calling the players sons of a bitches, I wish that they knew or cared or could just for 1 minute become a human instead of a Republican and say, wow, Chris Long donated $1 million to charity. That's amazing. $90 million, Malcolm Jenkins, to programs combating social inequality. That's amazing. These are heroes. These are good men. But no, because it's very shallow. It's very surface. Whatever the president says, it infects people like a disease, his base, and they just regurgitate it. And it's so destructive to the country. It's so destructive and divisive. I feel like the general public has just become so brainwashed. Like, what about critical thinking and free thinking? When did people stop thinking for themselves? Probably a long time ago. Politically, this is a really stupid move by Trump as well. Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 only by 69,000 votes. And he got a decent number of votes in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, where they are diehard Eagle fans. So you keep burning those bridges, Donald John Trump. You keep burning those bridges. Another bridge that he burned, I don't know if you saw my report on this, I don't know, a week or two ago, was the carrier plant. He promised those people at the carrier plant, the air conditioning plant, that their jobs would be saved and their jobs would not go to Mexico. He went to the carrier plant. He made a big deal out of it. He talked about it at every single one of his rallies after that. The footage was all over all the time. Donald Trump saved the carrier plant's jobs and they won't be going to Mexico. And all of those people adored him. In the interviews, they were saying it was just like Donald Trump fan club at the carrier plant. People were always wearing Make America Great Again hats. And what happened? They recently lost their jobs to a factory in Mexico. So Donald's, his lies only lasted so long before they couldn't hold up anymore. And now these people that voted for him and trusted him hate his guts. They were literally having an anti-Trump rally because they're all losing their jobs now. And everything he promised to them is completely out the window. And how about the 27,000 elderly people, I think it was in Indiana, that I reported on recently, that in that area was very, it keeps stopping, but that area was very, very thick with Trump voters, and 27 elderly people received letters, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, saying that they need to make arrangements. These are people living in old age homes with medical assistance, that they need to make other arrangements about where they will live and find ways to afford their medical bills, because they are being evicted, more than likely being evicted in July when the new health care plan goes into place. That's 27 elderly people who are being kicked out of old age homes, who are receiving medical attention, as well as thousands of other people who are at rehabilitation centers. Donald Trump's always, I don't know why I'm saying his whole name today. Trump's always talking about, mental health. Gun violence is because of mental health, and we're going to take a strong stand against to help people, mental health. No one's talking about the fact that thousands of people as well in that area received the same letter, and these are people receiving living in facilities where they receive full-time mental health care. They're being evicted, as well as drug rehabilitation centers, so people who are addicted to opioids. And Trump's always talking about that. I'm making such a strong stand against opioids, and he says drug dealers should be sentenced to the death penalty, yet he's in cahoots with the pharmaceutical company, and the pharmaceutical companies are really the ones behind the deaths of millions of Americans, the opioid crisis. And he's not talking about the fact that all these people who are getting help from rehabilitation centers as well have received notice that in July that help will be cut off. So why is this not on the news, and how come his base doesn't know about this? Please share this video. This is absurd. Everything he says he stands for, he doesn't. And if you're watching and you're a Trump supporter and you're like saying stuff, I see the comments, it's just like a liberal to say this and that, Obama was blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, guess what? I spoke out against Obama's corruption as well. I spoke out against Clinton, Bill's corruption, Hillary's corruption. When I was a child, I wrote a letter to the White House when the first Bush was president, and I addressed the corruption involving him, and I got a letter back from the White House. I still have it. Some people actually don't just go by party. I'm not a liberal. I am a progressive. I'm not a right, left, Democrat. I don't label myself. I am a person who looks at politicians and says, that MFer is corrupt, and he's causing the death of people and the oppression of people, and he's no good. Look at his policies suck. Look at his past record sucks. Whoever he is, he's bad. Then I look at other candidates, they're doing good things. Yes, it happens that never once have I liked a Republican, but that's because they're all, they're really not that great people. So whatever, put whatever labels you want on me, I suppose. And my point is that I wish we could separate ourselves from those labels and just literally focus on the policies and the issues and the struggles, because those are the things that divide us as a country. And those are the things that keep us voting for parties instead of people and the policies that they want to pass. Last but not least, children in cages. I reported on the immigrant children a week or two ago. Everything's a week or two ago. Reported on the children. I need tea. I have to leave soon for my niece's graduation. So I reported that, yeah, there's a big problem in regards to children. The policies that are separating children from their parents. So what happened was, and this was happening during the Obama administration, it's just really gotten a lot worse during the Trump administration, because, you know, he's got to cater to his base, and he said he was going to be tough on immigrants crossing the border, and I guess that means putting children in cages. So Senator Merkley was barred from entering a detention center for immigrant children. In Texas, Oregon Democrat Senator Merkley was barred from entering a detention center for immigrant children in Brownsville on Sunday after traveling to the center housed inside a Walmart to see firsthand the Trump administration's practice of separating immigrant children from their parents. So he got there, they wouldn't let him in. They would not let him enter. And then they called the police on him. The people at the detention center called the police on a senator who wanted to see what was happening inside the detention center, where children, up to 1,000, they say up to 1,000 children are being housed, held. They wouldn't let him in. So there's really not more to say. Like, what? Well, clearly you're hiding something. So he eventually did get in. He went back and he got in. He tweeted, "I was barred entry, asked repeatedly to speak to a supervisor. He finally came out and said he can't tell us anything. Police were called on us. Children should never be ripped from their families and held in secretive detention centers." I do want to say this was happening during the Obama administration, just not nearly as bad. Federal authorities reportedly separated at least 600 immigrant children from their parents last month alone. 600 immigrant children were separated last month alone from their parents, and that's what they're reporting. And I always believe that they're reporting to soften the numbers, whether, you know, it's probably way more. He went on to say, "When I was at the center at McAllen Border Station, this is a processing center earlier, and I was admitted there, I did see the people, hundreds of children locked up in cages there at the facility. They have big cages made out of fencing and then wire and nets stretched across the top of them, so children can't climb out." Wow. The Trump administration says that the children are at this processing center only for 3 days. Jeff Sessions went on a talk show and said this as well. "Those children are being well taken care of," said Jeff Sessions on a radio host, Hugh Hewitt. "Within 72 hours, they're taken to the Health and Human Services to be sure they're properly cared for." Well, wouldn't you know it, Health and Human Services said that those children are there for an average of 51 days. 72 hours, 51 days. That's a big difference. So you have these children ripped from their parents, children who have escaped violence, such bad violence that they took the chance of migrating, you know, thousands of miles into a country where they know that it could be very dangerous for them. And on top of it, they're separated from their parents now. And then they're kept in cages. These cages aren't nice. They don't have beds. They have a blanket on the cold cement. Blanket on the cement. Now, I wanted to mention as well, you might be seeing this picture going around. Has the children in cages, and you'll see like 3 people walking by. And there's a cage here with like 2 children. That image is being used in a lot of the articles, and I looked into it, and that is actually from the Obama administration. That was from 2014. So it has been proven, it is a fact, that the children are still in cages on the ground with one tiny blanket between them and the cement. But just to be transparent, and it doesn't diminish anything, but that picture was from 2014. Just that one. I'm sure we'll see more pictures now in the future, but obviously they weren't letting Senator Merkley in. They called the police on him, so they're not really letting people take pictures at this point, but we'll see them. Of course we will. So from October to April 30th, authorities apprehended 49,622 family units along the U.S.-Mexico border, 61% of them in the Rio Grande sector, out of 26,001 unaccompanied minors apprehended in the same period. 46% crossed at the Rio Grande sector. Minors who are apprehended crossing the border and the Rio Grande sector usually are sent to a central processing center. The facility can hold up to 1,000 children. So this is an old Walmart where these children are being held. Why are they crossing the border? Because of gun violence. So fact. The gang violence in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala has led to a wave of immigrants seeking refuge by the thousands in the United States since 2014. Politicians have debated for years how to handle the influx, and the Trump administration announced in May that it would prosecute as many adults apprehended at the border as possible. Although the Trump administration is not the first to separate immigrant children from their parents, the practice is on the rise because of the zero tolerance policy. So that's what's happening, is as soon as they cross over, their parents are being prosecuted, and at which point the children are being separated from them. Let's just backtrack here. These aren't criminals. They have done nothing wrong. I like to look at the big picture. We are all inhabitants of this planet Earth. In the big picture of things, what gives anyone the right to say, this is my land and not yours? You're suffering where you are, stay there. This is mine, that's yours. We are humans, and we're supposed to take care of each other and do for other people what we would want them to do for us. So lucky for us that we were dealt the cards we were, that we live in the United States, that we live in these safe communities with fences and walls and running water and electricity and Starbucks, and oh, life is so plush here. But screw everybody else who has it bad. Screw those who are dealt the cards where they were born into countries where there's so much violence that literally parents are uprooting their entire family, leaving behind loved ones in order to prevent their sons from being murdered and their daughters from being raped. Where is the friggin' compassion? I mean, what has happened to people? Have we lost our friggin' minds? Because I know for a fact that, you know, Joe Schmo and Sally Schmo, who send their children to private Catholic schools with uniforms and pick them up and stop at Dairy Queen on the way home, if there was gang violence that was so bad in their neighborhood that they were afraid their children were going to be killed, they would try to get the shit out of there. And they would hope that they would be welcomed by other human beings, and that somehow they would be sheltered until they could return to their home. But this administration has turned our country, who lives this very plush life, and not everybody in this country does at all, but most of the people who support Trump do, and somehow he's brainwashed them into thinking that these are criminals. I did a report last week that these children are being completely abused in these detention centers that children are being raped, they're being threatened, they're being called dogs. I'm sorry, this is very frightening. I am a Roma gypsy. We have been persecuted since the beginning of time. I know that, you know, throughout history, my people have been treated like animals, you know, and they ended up in the concentration camps. And I always thought, how could you get an entire, you know, all these German soldiers, women and men, to somehow view human beings as less than that, and then systematically exterminate them, treat them like animals. And though it's not Auschwitz here, the rhetoric is the same. And the hate that this kind of negative rhetoric that Trump has generated in this country is very much reminiscent of that which, you know, conspired with the Nazis. So, yeah, children being kept in cages, being called dogs, immigrants being treated like animals and criminals, and being called animals and criminals, it just goes so far beyond politics, and it goes like into literally like good and evil. And I just hate how this president is spreading evil, straight up evil in this country. You know, hate Muslims, hate, you know, transgender, hate Jews, hate immigrants, hate Mexicans. I hate the president for generating so much hate in this country. And I have sat next to and spoken to people I considered friends or even family members who are infected with this hate and saying to me things that I would never expect to come out of their mouths. And somehow they've become completely brainwashed into not caring about anybody else other than themselves. And it's frightening. And I wish people could take a step back and take a look at what they're thinking and what's going on. Because this president is so manipulative, and his propaganda and his lies are not just, you know, idiotic rhetoric from some orange-haired maniac. They're very dangerous. Anyway, that makes me sad. Anyway, so I'm getting emotional. I'm done. Let's end this on a good note. Before great change, great chaos precedes great change. And I believe that. I believe that it took Trump to set a lot of change in motion that has been needed in this country and on this planet for a very, very long time. And because politicians have existed that really put on a really good show and say the right things and smile and look loving, but meanwhile people are suffering and people are oppressed, things have gone unchecked. But because this man is so blatantly horrible, a lot of us have taken action. And a lot of these new candidates that have stepped forward to take roles, political roles in this country, are just like you and me, just good people who sat there and said, I have to do something, and I'm going to get into politics in order to change things for this country. So you're here watching this, I'm here saying this, we're on social media raising awareness. That's hope. That is hope. And I know we will stop this. I know we will change this. This is the turning point right now. So as much as it seems really scary, we won't allow another Auschwitz, and we won't allow hate to continue to grow in this country. But we have to be very careful as activists that we don't begin to be filled with hate, that we have to really move forward with compassion and patience. The way a good example is the Poor People's, what the heck is the name? The Poor People's Movement. I'm sorry, I completely forgot the name of it. That's happening now. The actions every Monday. I can't remember. But, you know, they're taking action to raise awareness against injustices in a peaceful, nonviolent, and loving way. Dang, I can't remember what it's called in full. Anyways, and Standing Rock. Look at Standing Rock. Nonviolent, peaceful. We can join together and we can change this country, and that's what we're doing. So on that note, please share, please, because we just have to raise awareness, and sometimes we have to plant seeds. And even though you might put this video, share it on Twitter or put it on your Facebook page, and you might not get a lot of likes from people who don't have the same political views as you, they might watch it and it might plant a seed. And that's what we have to do right now. We have to take advantage of every opportunity we have to change the course of history. And that really does start with spreading the truth. So thank you for joining me today. I have to drive now. Yeah, hopefully this doesn't get deleted. Oh my gosh, if this is deleted, I'm not going to be happy. But have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the earth and the sun if you have it, and go out, pick some wildflowers, grab some tea, sit in the sun, listen to the birds, take a deep breath and say, damn, I'm happy to be alive. Love you. Have a great weekend and talk to you later this week. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Yes. See ya.